I think music and sound waves are physical things as well as metaphysical or spiritual. Music absolutely has healing powers and healing properties. I think whatever music resonates with you is important. For some people, it's Slayer, and for some people, it's Bob Marley. And I think you can enjoy both, you know, and I think some people do. I do. So, yeah, I think that it's a real tangible thing without a doubt, man. I think that, you know, but it's based on your personal experience, whatever you want to take from it. I think one melody or one piece of music can affect everybody differently. And that's what's so fucking cool about music.
So here we are in the Weird Music Podcast. We got Luke from Lespecial, gonna have Greg Knight joining us too in a little bit. So Luke, man, let's get down to brass tacks to start this thing off. I've got a special report here that you were doing DMT with the Ween guys and something about cigarettes, numb nuts. Care to tell us more, Luke?
It'd be my pleasure, Cam. Thanks for having me on, buddy. Weird music is dope. Yeah, I guess I might as well start at the beginning with the Ween story. Unfortunately, there's no DMT involved. That might be a rumor, but at this point, the rumors have kind of gotten ahead of me, and the story has taken on a life of its own, organically, as it were. Basically, it all just came from a story that I totally made up after Summer Camp Festival. We were there for one night. We had an awesome set. The next day, I was in a cafe with Claw, pretty tired, and posted in the Ween group. I made up a story. Oh, no, in the Summer Camp group, I made up a story and said, last night I was chilling, watching Ween, which I did actually get to see them play. That was the only part of the story that's true. I said I was smoking a cigarette, and the lead singer of Ween came up to me and asked if he could have a cigarette. So I extended my pack to him to take one, and he took the whole pack, said, "Thanks, numbnuts," and walked away. And I said in the story, I'll never see Ween again. So it was just like me just fucking around, trolling some of the festival wooks. Checked my phone like 10 minutes later, and it had like 500 reacts to it. And I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a thing. And it was. And fast forward now, a few months later, somebody gave me a pair of sunglasses in Denver that said numbnuts on them. I've had people make me t-shirts with Marlboro packets that say numbnuts. Somebody gave me this like glittery cigarette pin with a Bugner symbol as the ember that said "Thanks, numbnuts" and like elegant gold cursive. So yeah, you know, I just kind of ran with it. Ween fans seem pretty entertaining. They were having a lot of fun in the Ween meme group, so I'd pop in there every now and then. But it was just like a fun, dumb story that just kind of kept perpetuating. It's the laws of gravity in the scene. You know, you just give something a little push, and then whatever happens,
force takes over.
That's it, man. So yeah, it was pretty silly, but it was funny. I was glad I was able to bring joy to Ween's fans' hearts around the country.
So it's not every day we have Lespecial on the Weird Music Podcast coming to the Summit Music Hall here next week. I think it's the 17th. Can't wait for that. We're gonna have a link in this description. It's gonna get dark and funky up in the Summit. Luke, I want to ask you, man, like, you know, Lespecial's your life, and it's a very certain kind of music Lespecial makes. How did you kind of arrive at the flavor of Lespecial? And maybe to ask that differently, what element do you feel like heaviness and darkness adds to music?
That's a great question. You know, I think that we've been playing in a band for 16 years together since we were kids. So whatever kind of flavor we've arrived at now has developed kind of more organically. I think it's constantly evolving and changing. I think that we're three people that have a pretty varied taste in music and what we like, and we like to keep it fresh and exciting for ourselves. And so Lespecial was never going to be one genre or one vibe. It was always going to be this kind of amalgamation and this like stew of shit. That doesn't sound appealing, but
depends who you ask.
Yeah, that's true. So, you know, I think it's like kind of constantly always changing, but I think the darkness and the heaviness is something that's always been there. And maybe it was stronger in our roots and now has really kind of come back to be a pretty defining part of our sound. I think that it's kind of, we play in the quote unquote jam band scene. We play a lot of jam music festivals and we love it. I think partially because jam band music fans are really open minded and they like to hear a big, broad variety of sounds and songs and music in general. So that always appealed to us. And I think kind of helped us find our footing in the jam scene world. But I think that it's like there's a lack of kind of dark and heavy music going on there. I think when we first started getting into it, like our first festival that we went to together was Bonnaroo in 2006. And I mean, we were seeing bands like Radiohead and Les Claypool's Frog Brigade and like Medeski Martin and Wood and like bands that weren't afraid to get heavy or dark. There was a lot of jam bands that were like kind of on the other side of it. But I don't know. I think you can get kind of tired of like a major key guitar solo or just music about like, hey man, it's all going to be good. I think you need the darkness to counter that, I think in life as well as in music. And I think that sometimes people forget that and they think dark music is associated with like negativity or something bad happening when it's the opposite. Embracing that and learning how to channel that and focus that, that's where the good comes out of, right? I think bands like Tool and Primus, for me and for us as a band, do that as well. So, I think that it's that kind of cliche of you don't have the light without the dark. So I think we're happy bringing the dark, at least for now.
So Luke, have you heard of Reiki? Have you ever had a Reiki session?
I have. My mom is in fact a level 5 Reiki master. Yeah, shout out my mom, Alice Bemand. So she sometimes does some Reiki on me when I'm when I'm on the road from home. So I might have to hit her up, and when I'm feeling really beat one of these days, Mom, hit me with some of that Reiki. I need it right now.
You ever think like music does a similar thing?
100%, man. I think music and sound waves are physical things as well as metaphysical or spiritual or whatever. And I think, yeah, man, I think music absolutely has healing powers and healing properties. So that's why I don't mean to get away and say like, oh, major key music is corny. I think whatever music resonates with you is important. For some people, it's Slayer, and for some people, it's Bob Marley. And I think you can enjoy both, and I think some people do. I do. So yeah, I think that it's a real tangible thing without a doubt, man. I think that, but it's based on your personal experience, whatever you want to take from it. I think one melody or one piece of music can affect everybody differently. And that's what's so fucking cool about music.
I love that. I read this book called Boiling Energy, and it was like a academic book written by like a college student in the 70s. Basically about the role of music in a tribal culture, like this specific tribe in Africa. And so basically they used music to heal people. Like if there was somebody in the tribe who, had whatever ailment, within their ceremony, that person would kind of be a focal point, would get like healing. And this book took us through anecdotes of different like miraculous stories of people healing and how they were skeptical of it at first at the beginning of their research and just how like mind-blowing it was. And I would be remiss not to ask you, like, what do you think it is about rhythm, how entrancing it can be, about low frequencies, harmony, they can create such like a transcendent experience?
That's a great question, man. I think you could devote a lifetime to studying that. And, I wish I would love to keep studying that even through like the scientific aspects of it. I guess just speaking from my personal experience, it's like there's physical studies done, right, where people play classical music and it helps plants grow. So I think we have like tangible proof that music can have these kind of effects. I mean, I took a class at Berkeley called I guess it was called like Baja drumming, and it was about this kind of drumming in Africa that where you would study, the goal was to raise these spirits called orishas. And in the Baja drumming, it was like there was like a high drum, a low drum, and medium drums and things like that. And it was complex and difficult rhythmically to kind of get your head around. But the concept was that these like sound waves would either awaken something in you or awaken these kind of like ancient spirits. And it's something that I can't speak, too much on. I'm definitely a novice when it comes to that shit. I didn't even do well in that class. It was hard as fuck, but really intriguing and interesting and awesome. And yeah, I mean, I think that like I said, I think music affects everyone differently, but I think it's undeniable that it's a physical force that can affect things. I mean, you can put, if you put a glass of water on the table and you play a subwoofer, the water molecules move. You know what I mean? And I think that happens in our own bodies too. I think when you go and see like a bass show in front of a subwoofer, your whole body is shaking. I mean, you're literally being vibrated by music. And that can be a physical resonance or it can be a mental resonance where you just hear a song and a melody reminds you of when you were a kid or something like that. So, I mean, I think music is one of the most powerful forces, in the world. But I could try and like ramble on about it, but I feel like I'll just continue on my path and try to keep learning about it because it's super exciting. And I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. And I hope that if I perform music, it can affect somebody in some kind of, positive or experience or way. But yeah, it's a deep question, man. It's a lot to unpack, but I'm grateful to be able to make that my life.
Yeah. Like, how does that feel being, it's like your role to be that shaman on stage?
It's wild, man. It's funny. I'm reading this biography on the road right now on Sun Ra. Sun Ra is a pretty like psychedelic cosmic musician who's actually like a big band leader back in like the 50s. I mean, he started in like the 30s. He came up in like segregated Alabama in the 30s playing in swing bands and went on to start his Sun Ra's orchestra, which was very like cosmic. And they would record music when certain like suns were in orbit. I mean, this dude claimed that he was from Saturn and he's a messenger from extraterrestrials. But his whole thing is that musicians are kind of like messengers of this sound and of these intergalactic cosmic things that maybe humans can't grasp without music. But musicians, it's their job to kind of play that shaman role and go from city to city and introduce people and reawaken people and things like that. And he would think that things that would drag musicians down, maybe like drugs or alcohol or whatever, would be the devil kind of like intervening and being like, your message is too extreme or the world isn't ready for that yet. So, Sun Ra's perspective of musicians kind of being like a conduit of some greater celestial thing. I mean, that's pretty deep, like, I don't know how much I can get into that or understand that even. I think, but even if it's just, man, a guy playing guitar on the street and somebody walks by and is like, oh, that sounded fucking cool. Like, well, then you kind of were a messenger in that moment and you did just affect somebody, even if it was for like a momentary glance or something, So I think there's all different scales and so they can get as big and abstract as you want. But yeah, I mean, I think the role of a musician as a messenger is something that's cool. And I can vibe with that for sure.
How would you associate music as being good or bad?
I think it's totally subjective, man. I think there is no good or bad really with music. Like, I think there's so many different concepts you could think of. Like, you study like Western classical music and it's all about rules, and studying rules. And then it was same kind of like with evolution of jazz, it's, like bebop was rules and there was rhythm changes and you had to do this and play this over that. And then Miles came and just broke all those rules and was like, now instead of all these chords and all these tonalities, there's just one modality. So, like the concept of and notion of rules and good and bad, I mean, it's all so subjective and that's any kind of art form. I mean, like, but at the same time, somebody can play something for me and I'm like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to hear that. But, that's my personal taste. You know what I mean? I mean, yeah, I think everyone has the right to kind of judge what they find to be good or bad, but I don't think there is like a universal bad or good, like Johnny G, our guitarist, he does these things, toddler jams, where he gets all these kids drumming. And, even that's like kind of unique and special to like what's some little kid going to react on a drum. Like you wouldn't have somebody walk by and go like, oh, that's bad. Like there's bad. I mean, maybe somebody would, but you have to be like a real funny piece of shit to like do that. But, it's too subjective, man. You can have taste, it's all just taste. There's music I don't like, but I can't always just say like, it's bad. I mean, I guess sometimes I'll see a group of musicians and be like, yeah, like they don't seem to be like schooled musicians. But I mean, like a lot like punk music is simple and amazing. And it's not like, like everyone in the Clash has a music degree, but it was relatively simple forms of music, but it was like emotional and powerful. So I think like words like good and bad just kind of go out the window and it just gets back to personal taste,
So like with your ear, right now in 2021, what would you say are some like common themes across some of your favorite music right now?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess for me, like what I've been listening to, I've been listening to a lot of like gent music lately, like heavy, like chugging, polyrhythmic music and stuff like that. And there's so much of that coming out, like bands like Animals as Leaders and Sean and Polyphia. That music's really exciting to me because on one side of the technical aspect of it, it's really difficult to play, but it combines a lot of shit that I used to listen to, like new metal and heavier bands, like like Korn and like Limp Bizkit and Primus and bands in the '90s, and it's bringing it up to and making it even more technical and more and like introducing more electronic elements like an 808 with like a genty 7-string guitar. For me, that's like some of the hot shit right now, and we all listen to a lot of that stuff and try to like kind of write with that mindset. But we listen to a lot of like electronic music and like shit that's on the whatever's on the radio, and it's always interesting to see why it's so big or why it affects people. And like what is it about 808s and trap music that makes it the most popular music in America? Like that shit's interesting to us, and there's plenty of beats where we listen to it, we're like, oh, that shit's fucking dope. Like the new Kanye album, I think is pretty dense and intense and wild, and I've been enjoying listening to it. But then there's something I'll listen to on the radio and be like, that doesn't do it for me. It's too simple. It has an annoying vocal hook, whatever. But I think in terms of common themes, I mean, we are like, we just had a year of like every musician being like locked in their bedroom or their basement or their studio. So I think we're seeing a lot more like electronic music being created and people working in their labs and less like human collaboration because people couldn't collaborate with their bandmates or fellow musicians for a year. And I hope that we get to a balance of that. I think it's really cool that a kid can make an whole album on his laptop in his basement, but there is something special about musicians being in a room playing. So I think we're going to start to see like, maybe that balance out a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. I guess that's kind of like where I see music going right now. And it's exciting to see musicians touring again. People have missed that like interaction, not just on stage, but crowds too.
So like outside of music, what would you say are some things that keep you like motivated and like inspired to create?
On the road, like I try to read, I've been reading that Sun Ra biography has been pretty inspiring. A musician I've always admired and enjoyed, and kind of learning the history of him and also like just learning some of the history of jazz has been like super eye-opening and interesting to me. I'm definitely a video game Nintendo Switch player. I'm not like one for like Modern Warfare, like kind of those games, but like, I mean, I'm playing like Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and like Pokemon and shit on my Switch, and like, that's just something on the road to kind of keep me, busy or whatever. If I'm just like chilling for a few hours in the van or a green room, but that, like kind of like RPGs and things like that do inspire me sometimes, and like the art themes for them, or just like the battle mechanics of it. I love JRPGs. I love like Japanese music and video games like Final Fantasy. If people have listened to our music can tell, like Final Fantasy and Zelda is like a point of inspiration for us, so those things all inspire me, and just being able to like see more music. Like I'm super excited beginning tonight, we're doing 5 nights in a row with Mike Dillon's Punkadelic band. And Mike Dillon's somebody we've been listening to since we were kids, man, since he used to tour with Frog Brigade. We would watch like the Bonnaroo DVD at like Johnny's house when we were kids. And he's an inspiring musician in person to me. And so, I'm really fortunate to be able to share the stage with him and watch that. So I'm going to try and, be there for that and soak up some of that inspiration and hopefully be able to take some of it with me,
So we're talking about video games and
yeah.
Like a big theme, you go to a jam band music festival, you're bound to hear a video game theme song.
Yeah.
But like stepping to the side of that, the special, you guys have dabbled in film scoring. I know. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Vice gig you recently had. But my question is like, in approaching songwriting for lespecial and then songwriting for like a film, like how are those 2 acts different?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something we learned a lot about through the Vice experience. A friend of mine, Alex Megaro, that I went to college with, he works with Vice. And so he hit us up about creating some music. And this was during the pandemic. And we were fortunate enough to be able to actually get together and do some work. And so there was a totally new project for us. And I think what we tried to like kind of tap into and what we did in Ancient Homies as well was, writing with kind of like a vibe in mind or a scenario or a soundscape or things that don't necessarily revolve around like a note or a modality or a melody, but like an emotive situation or an emotion, a feeling. And that's kind of what it's about with film scoring. From what I've like learned about film scoring, and I studied it a bit at Berkeley, is like, you know, strip down, your job as a film composer, the film score is supposed to tell the audience what to feel or how to feel. So it's like if something tragic's happening, the music's tragic. It's like I was thinking about that the other night. We were in Airbnb and I was just watching some dumb shark movie because I'm also like a horror movie nerd. And there's some new shark movie. It sucks. Don't watch Great White if you're watching. Great White sucks. New on Prime, but it's a shark movie. I was like, I'll try it. And it's like, there's all these scenes of like these beautiful beaches and people hanging on the beach. And it's like this really ominous droning in the background, like, and it's like, that's how you know it's a horror movie. Like, this could be, and there's like some tropical beach song playing. It's like, oh, it's vacation. But like, no, this ominous drone tells us like there's a shark in that water, or there's something just beneath the surface, like waiting to fucking eat you. So, taking that into Vice, we were scoring this episode of this series called Source Material, and it was about the Australian bushfires. And so we're watching the episode and working on it, and it's intense. I mean, there's like, cars on fire, forests on fire, like trampolines rolling in yards. And so we went like, pretty heavy, like kind of almost free, like drumming and drones. And, John kind of got like a sound on his guitar that was almost like a fire alarm, but just kind of this like apocalyptic dread warning. And they liked it, and they approved our score, but they were like, it's too heavy, it's too intense, there's too many notes, it's like, go more subtle. I think what it was the music was distracting, like you don't want the audience to be listening too much to the music. You want it to be like affecting them subconsciously. So that was a really interesting thing to think about and actually play and perform. And I think it was a lesson that we like took with us as well, even just writing and some of the Ancient Homie stuff and new music. And, we like to create soundscapes and to create, evoke like an atmosphere and a vibe. And it's something we want to keep doing more of. The film scoring thing is like that's something super inspiring to me and to us. So I hope that we can keep doing more of that. It's definitely really interesting, really cool. And some of our favorite musicians have done it. Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead has created some like my favorite scores, like There Will Be Blood.
We've got a good friend of the podcast, Mr. Greg Knight. Got Greg in here. Greg's a killer publicist. He's got his own podcast, the Great Beyond podcast, and he's got a couple questions for Luke.
My man.
Cam, thanks so much for hosting. It's good to be back on the Weird Music Podcast. For my moderate cyber stalking I've been doing due to FOMO, I've been keeping an eye on how things have been going, and it seems like this was a big weekend.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. It was our first time headlining Cervantes, the ballroom there, and it was like almost 900 people. It was wild for us. It was a really fucking cool show, and we played 4 nights in a row, and a lot of people came out to all of the shows. So it was amazing. And then like we were in Aggie Theater the next night, which was a great show, and then 2 nights in Steamboat. So we were really trying to switch it up, man. We were like digging pretty deep into the catalog and trying to not just focus on the Ancient Homie stuff, which obviously we've been playing more like throughout the past year, but older songs, covers, requests, like really trying to adhere to people's requests, even though sometimes they're like bonkers. We did do, I was like looking at the set list yesterday and I was like, we really did Old Town Road into Toxic. Like I don't know what I would like. Some people are gonna look at it and be like, what the fuck is wrong with this band? But maybe it's exciting to some people. But yeah, it was a great run, like musically and crowd wise. It was a lot of fun for us.
Well, Old Town Road into Toxic is exactly what I was saying. I was experiencing FOMO. The past year and a half, really, obviously it's almost a year to the day since Ancient Homies came out. But I think one thing I've said a lot about lespecial in the past year is you guys have been really innovative during the pandemic. Like you've tried a lot of different things. And I'm wondering how much the pandemic kind of force you guys to think differently about your approach to things, and if you think that in what ways that's paying off for you now that you're kind of back on the road.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I was just talking with Cam a little bit about it. We did get to do that Vice project, and we got to like really dive into some film scoring projects, which I don't know we necessarily would have been able to do if we were on the road, or if our contact was working on this source material project for Vice, because it was like a remote project. So it's one of those situations like where one door closes, another opens. And we were really like interested in trying to pursue some of those other things and seeing what we could do with streaming. With the New Year's stream, we got to work with Vin Pugliese and VFX Design and do this kind of like big LED wall thing. And like if we're gonna do a stream, let's not play in a club with no people where it just feels like it's a scenario or an atmosphere lacking. Let's create something that we wouldn't be able to do. Let's play in a warehouse in Mass that we couldn't sell tickets to, but we can put on a production. So there was those things, but the coolest thing to me was like the drive-in shows, which I think that model was cool. Like I wouldn't say like, obviously it was a bummer that was the only way to see live music, but that was such an obvious situation where like, oh, we can do a live score of a movie, and so we did it with the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, like an old silent film. And we're not the first people to have done that. Like bands and musicians scored like that and Nosferatu every Halloween. But that was a really cool way to do it with these multiple, screens, and people could listen to it on the radio in their car. So like, I think it's awesome to be able to be on the road and playing for a crowd every night. And, you don't take it for granted now after you haven't been able to do it for a while. But I would totally be into doing more of those drive-ins, or even just more of the live movie scoring thing. So that's something I hope that we can continue to do for sure.
How about like your personal relationship to playing on stage after not being on the road for such a long time? Yeah. Has it changed, one, your approach to how you're touring? Because I see you guys in the gym. And like, has it changed your approach to touring, and like, is there any sort of deeper significance to playing live now that you're back on stage?
Yeah, I think that like when we first started playing again, when we were playing in like June, like Greg, you came out to that show, the Sultan Room that we played in Brooklyn. And it was, weird at first to be playing for people like sitting at like tabletops. And like for jazz, or maybe for certain kind of, certain vibe, it's cool. But for us, that we're playing like kind of more like heavy and intense music, it felt weird. But it was, and that was just the nature of the beast, and being able to get people to stand up and slowly seeing rooms fill out more and less tabletops was cool to see. But now it's kind of like we've kind of been in it for a little bit. We're getting more used to like masking up, keeping our green room super in a bubble. But I think that just touring more and touring, like we have a great crew out here. We got Claw, our manager, with us, Chris, our tour manager, and Coop, our sound guy, on top of the three of us, like just kind of pushing each other to try and just be our best selves every day, and little things that we can do personally to help the team. And going into it, we're like, let's try and get into the gym as much as we can. And let's try and, get to the hotel earlier. And, I've been trying to like read more than just like going out to the van and smoking a bowl, or go out to the van, smoke a bowl, and then read, rather than just doom scroll on Instagram after. So, I think it's both, right? It's like you are like, man, I miss this. I'm fucking fortunate to be able to do this. But it's also like, I got to up my game. You have to keep learning about how to do it better for yourself, your crew, and the whole crowd. So it's just like that, just pushing each other to try and be better and get ripped, which is the ultimate goal. Get ripped.
Get ripped, read, get ripped.
yeah, you got it, man. You know the routine.
Cam Elkins next week is catching the special for the second to last show on the fall repeat tour. What can Cam expect that he hasn't seen from the special before? And then, Cam, what is the strangest request you can throw at Luke?
Nice. Well, I thought Resonance was really fun. That was an awesome festival. That was my first time at Marvin's Mountaintop, and that whole like natural amphitheater setting was so cool. But it was a daytime set, and it was like we were cooking, dude. Like just the sun right in my face. I looked back at some like video footage. I was like, that looks painful. So I'm really excited to check out the summit. Rob from The Works is the man. I've heard awesome things about this venue, so I'm excited to play that for the first time. I'm excited to play like indoors at night. I think we can get more into like the lespecial vibe than a daytime festival set. And in terms of like requests and shit, we'll have to see, man. That's going to be after another week of shows. Or if we're just going to keep busting shit out, like you might be able to hear stuff off our like 2005 demo at that point, man. I don't think anybody wants to hear that, but it depends, man. Yeah, where we're at, and if what requests people throw at us. So let's see what you got.
That song Vessel, that's pretty catchy. Selfishly, there's this artist named Yeba. I don't know if either of you are familiar with this song, Boomerang by Yeba.
Okay, cool. The real deal. She's from Arkansas, I think.
Oh, really?
R&B singer. My sister called me like a few, it's probably 2 months ago. My sister, like, I always pretend like I'm like the guy that knows about music, and meanwhile my sister's
Pretend.
low-key like the goat. So she
Really?
called me, and she's like, "Yo, you haven't heard about Yebba yet?" And she was like, "Me and Dad have been listening to Yebba for months, and what do I know?" But really, like, just released a new album, I think this year, right?
Yeah.
That like it's a fantastic album, and I've been waiting to hear if Yebba would be going on tour, or if lespecial would be playing any Yebba.
Dude, a lespecial Yebba Boomerang cover, that song Boomerang, that shit would slap.
Is it something coverable? Like, you think it's something we could pull off?
Ah, that's a good question. Yeah. I'm just gonna say yeah.
Might have to do I'll take some liberties with it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Y'all can do anything. Looking at next year, I know there's a lot to be excited about. You know, there's a lot like of bigger things coming. What's one goal you have? Maybe not even for 2022, but like 2025. And it doesn't even have to be musical. Could be, you know, all of us have podcasts, right? Could be a podcast.
Yeah. Right.
But what do you want? What do you want?
There's so many different layers to it. I think just to tie it in with kind of what we've been talking about a bit here just on the podcast is just to really dive deeper into that music scoring world, man. And, you know, and to be able to kind of work with different directors and on different kinds of projects. And the Vice short thing was so cool, but to be able to work on a whole movie would be so dope. And maybe to work with other film composers that have more experience than us, but we could focus on the music aspects, and bring in other people to focus on the more technical or production end is a goal. And I guess on a more specific note is to try and I've got a project. I've talked to you a bit about it, Greg, but not Cam or on the podcast, but I'm gonna put it out there just now, but I am starting to work on a jam band horror movie that I can't reveal the title of it yet, but it's been something that's been floating in my mind for like a couple of years now. And I started to kind of actually work on like a screenplay of it and talk to some different people that I would love to get involved. So yeah, I would love to be able to put out the world's first jam band horror movie within the next few years for sure.
That sounds like a good trip.
A good trip or a bad trip, you know, it'll be interesting either way, I think.
Breaking news on the Weird Music Podcast. Breaking news.
No, it's good. I got to start putting it out there before somebody does it or takes my idea. You know what I mean? I got to let people know that I'm working towards this project. So.
Starring Greg Knight.
Yeah, I've got a role with Greg Knight in mind. Yes,
that's it. Word. So I'm like ready to see some special in 2022. I'm ready to see what you guys sound like in an arena. Congratulations, by the way, Asheville.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we get to play 2 nights at Explore Asheville Arena with Humphreys McGee, which is one of our favorite bands we've been seeing and going to since we were kids. So super excited for that. Yeah.
Cam, I have a question for you also. As you approach the end of the year with yet another illustrious guest in Luke Bemand, where do you want to see the Weird Music Podcast go next year? And who are your top 3 potential guests you could have?
Oh, you know, I want to have Yebba.
Oh, shit.
This band Parcels, I imagine you're familiar. Some feel good funky shit. You know that thing though about how like you might not want to meet your idols, you know, your favorite musicians. Like there's this certain relationship a fan has with. So, you know, in my mind, sometimes I wouldn't want to have some of my favorite musicians on the podcast.
I think you're pretty selective, like with where you go with your interviews, you know, because of the way you ask questions. That's why I ask. And I think Parcels would be an interesting chat for sure. You know,
I want to get Wim Hof on here. Wim Hof on here 2023. Yeah. That's a good question though. Maybe we'll get Greg Knight back on here.
Hey.
Maybe we'll get Coach on here.
Hey.
You mentioned Humphreys McGee. That'd be nice. Katie, the other half of this podcast, was saying we got to get Stasek on. She loves that. If you hear any noise, it's just me and the boys bopping. The shirt. That's what sold her.
Stasek is the king of t-shirts. That dude's t-shirts are next level. Stasek is the man.
To close this out, I got final questions. Greg, what's the best part about being Greg Knight?
The fact that I know Luke Bemand, and then he, and that he still chills with me. That's probably my top 5. Otherwise, I don't know. Every now and then I get to, do some cool shit like talk to you. And I'm glad that someone wants to hear what I have to say on a Wednesday night.
Hell yeah.
Of course. And Luke, wrapping this up, any lespecial fans out there listening, any final words from you to them? Message from Luke?
Yeah, man, just like super, super appreciative of the support this year, man. Like from going into the pandemic and not touring and people tuning into the live streams and buying the albums, like we're about to sell out of our second pressing of the Ancient Homies vinyl. I have my Spotify rap numbers here somewhere. If I can just bring them up. Just kidding. But no, I mean, I am like mad appreciative of that, of people supporting when there was no shows to go to. But even just now, man, like, playing 4 nights in Colorado and seeing a lot of the same faces. And even if, whatever city and coming out once, it's awesome. It's pushing us to challenge ourselves and to keep being better. And we want to keep being better for the fans, and they're awesome. So just, yeah, mad appreciation, man. And we're going to keep bringing it for them. So respect.
This is the Weird Music Podcast. Give us a subscribe. The special. We'll see you at the summit 17th. Yeah. Greg, tell our friends about the Great Beyond podcast while we have you here.
It's not a Goose podcast, it's just a podcast. Myself, my co-hosts Joey Parisi and Bruce Robinson, talk about all the happenings and some of the not happenings, available everywhere you can find podcasts, and hopefully with some exciting news soon.
Weird Music Podcast. Much love, y'all. Luke, thank you, man. The special.
Thank you, Cam.
Spotify Wrapped to the moon. Much love, y'all. You made it this far. Thank you for listening, and a big thank you to our sponsors, Hemp Relief CBD, SEM Tickets, Devil Wind Brewing, and Artillery Productions. We got links in the description below. Go check out all the awesome stuff they've got going on. And yeah, much love, everyone.